Howdy, folks. WindyCityThetanWatch here in the studio tonight. Tonight we're going to do something a little different. I've created a how-to guide on how to um, prevent body routing or how to combat body routing if you catch it in your area or in your neighborhood. So let me get to the intro real quick and then we'll come back and hit the article.
Welcome back to a Windy City They Tan Watch, the channel where truth meets freedom, right here in the heart of Chicago. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with our latest investigations, interviews, and insights. Your support fuels our fight for freedom and truth. So, let's dive into today's journey, armed with knowledge and the relentless spirit of the Windy City.
Howdy, everybody. Windy City They Watch. Tonight, again, we're going to look at, I wrote an article, this is kind of came out of what Natalie and I talked about last week, and it's how to combat body routing. Now, I want to put out a bunch of disclaimers. This is how I do it. I'm not giving advice. I'm no lawyer. This isn't legal advice. I'm not WindyCityThetanWatch, so nobody's following me. There are no people here that are part of my cult, and I'm not trying to manage a cult for them. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and bring up a screenshot of this article. So this article is on WindyCityThetanWatch.com. I'll go ahead and dump it here in the comments for you. It's in the description. I'm pretty sure I left it in the description of the video as well. And this is what we're going to go over tonight. And we're going to kind of look at some highlights. I'm going to call them highlights. We can call them whatever we care to. About times when I've encountered body routers and some of the video that shows how I've been able to frustrate them, we'll say. Let's welcome everybody in. By the way, if you are coming in on the replay crew, please make sure you're adding comments, like, subscribes. I'm going to, again, just to annoy Chris, all subscriptions will be free tonight. So you're allowed to subscribe, and I will charge you nothing extra if you subscribe this evening. Hey, Nancy, thanks for being in here. We've got Fuzzy here on the mod team. Always appreciate that. Chris. And looks like that's all we've got commenting so far. So what this article is, it's kind of the way that I try to combat it. And it may be helpful to you and it may not be helpful to you, but I would definitely consider looking at what we've got in here. Okay. As we go down here, okay, I think that I hate, let me see if I can... Oops. If I can make this bigger. Okay, don't do that. There we go. I don't know if you can really see that or not, but in the beginning, what I'm basically saying is that, hey, here's what body routing, well, first of all, I'm telling you, this is my opinion, and in no way am I acting as your advisor, and I'm not taking any responsibilities for your actions. I'm just telling you that this is the way that I've kind of gone about this. Let's start with what's body routing. Aaron had a little bit of a special on it last week. He talked about, I liked his term, sidewalk recruiting. So body routing or sidewalk recruiting, it's the way that Scientology does retail recruiting. So this is why there is a test center in Hollywood and why there's the Ideal Org in Chicago exists the way it does, and in Austin the way that it does, because they're high foot traffic areas. Howdy, Dave. I see you there, Ellie, too. Thanks for coming in. These are high foot traffic places, and these high foot traffic places, first of all, LRH said that's the only place we should be putting orgs, but these are target-rich environments for Scientology. So there's an awful lot of people that live in these areas, and as people walk down the sidewalk, we should be able to both chat them up to pull them into the organization or to be able to hand out literature. Now, this literature is Scientology direct, but it's also all of the front groups. So already in Chicago, we've seen CCHR, we've seen Way to Way to Happiness as one of the elements. Of course, we've seen the personality test and the Dianetics books. We saw a drugs pamphlet being handed out one day as well. We captured a couple of those documents as well. So the body routers are really out there to pull people into the organization. And as a never in and somebody who doesn't feel like I've got the skill set to help people leave Scientology, now I'm going to do whatever I can to plant seeds in their head whenever I'm around. And I'm going to be doing whatever I can to confuse them, to tell them the way that it is in the real world and to give them the foundation numbers so that if they need to get out, there's pathways for that to occur. Okay. But the ultimate goal of body routing is really to initiate that contact and pull somebody into the org, and then it's somebody else's responsibility to take that new raw meat, which is a terrible term, but the new initiate that's been pulled in off of the street, and run them through Scientology to try to get them further involved or more deeply involved into Scientology. And by further involvement, it means opening their wallet to a greater extent. The involvement is going to be, we want to get you buying books, and we want to get you on courses. And it's very high sales pressure. Last week, we were able to talk to a gentleman on the street, and he had been pulled in for Dianetics. He got pressured into buying the Dianetics book. He was the one who said, yeah, they just asked me, am I going to pay cash or credit? They didn't say, am I going to buy the book? They'd already said that. And then they kind of pushed him into trying to get the onto courses in that space. Okay, so how do we combat that? I want to start off with safety, right? Safety should always be the prime directive when you're out there, right? Your personal safety should be the utmost concern to you, more so than getting anybody, helping prevent people from entering Scientology. And I'm going to go through this in a couple of ways. I think it's absolutely important that if you can, bring a buddy. Let somebody else know that you're going to be there. It's always more comfortable if you've got more than one person there, and you've got somebody who can get your back. Whether it's bail money or help defend you in case of something, or to be able to call for help if needed in that space. So if you can, bring a friend. If you don't have a friend, and even if you do have a friend, I would highly advise you to at least have a camera. Now, everybody's phone has a camera. You could buy a body camera. I do now have both a body camera and I've got my phone streaming all the time. You don't necessarily have to be streaming. That you can absolutely prevent. I've stopped body routing from occurring in the train station after I've turned my camera off. And yeah, I would have loved to have had it on the stream, but it's more important that we're able to stop the body routing, right? I don't want. I want to be streaming. I want to be increasing the awareness of how pervasive Scientology is. But at the end of the day, it's trying to prevent people from being sucked into Scientology. The reason we have the cameras is to record the activities that take place, because Scientology can be a very litigious group, and at least they threaten lawsuits all the time. They don't go through with lawsuits very often anymore, but they have always threatened that. Always make sure that you're being aware of your surroundings. I always have my head on a swivel, so I'm always looking around. I try to keep the camera steady so people are seeing a somewhat steady view, but I'm always looking around. Are people approaching me from in front? Are people approaching me from behind? So that's really what I want to make sure that you're doing, is you're ensuring your safety. So, number one, can you bring somebody else with you? Number two, make sure you've got cameras on. And if you feel like it, please, more than happy to have you be streaming out there and knowing that. This next one's kind of important, and it's interesting because if you were watching Kellycopter today, Kellycopter had something very similar to this, that, hey, you need to know your state and local laws. And I'll say that, for the international crowd, national laws, right? I can't be filming in public in Japan, as for instance, because privacy is tantamount to our freedom, like our Bill of Rights types freedoms. Okay. So make sure that you're aware of what's going on in your area and what you can and can't do. I would look for laws that are around assault, around stalking, around battery, to see what's going on in that space. Because what the most common claim is probably going to be some form of stalking towards assault in this space. You're going to be in near proximity to a Scientologist in this process. One thing I would also encourage you, right, that get involved with either find whoever the civil rights groups are. ACLU is always a civil rights group, civil rights attorneys. I'm not saying you need an attorney to go out there, but I'm not also saying that you shouldn't do that. And just staying informed of what the laws are. And again, they change frequently. So just because last year or 2 years ago is one thing, that does not mean that it's going to be the same thing today. Okay. Now, we've taken care of the first thing, the first two things, right? Safety and understanding what you can and cannot do in this space. Now, these next elements are kind of my playbook for what I've been doing out in Chicago in these spaces, right? I'm always keeping my distance. Not only am I keeping my distance, but I'm announcing that I'm keeping my distance. So if the police ever run the tape back, they can tell that, hey, I never had any intent, or I've stated that my intent was never to really approach these people. My goal is to say, hey, I want to let you as Scientologists exercise your First Amendment right and pass out propaganda. I'm going to exercise my First Amendment right, and I'm going to inform and educate the people that you're talking to that you're a cult and all of the crimes, a list of the subset of crimes, because again, I could never number all of the crimes, but a list of crimes that we're going to see in that space. I personally don't approach the recruiters. On occasion, I'll kind of tease them about the idea that I'm hurting their stats, but that's as they're walking towards me or they walk past me. Oftentimes what will happen is if they're walking down the sidewalk, eventually they get frustrated and they might reverse course and turn back and head to the organization. Well, they're going to end up coming past you. And in that situation, they're going to pass me. I'm not really approaching them. They're approaching me. And I might say something to them, right? Never, under any circumstance, unless you're defending yourself from any kind of assault, should you ever touch or come in contact with somebody from the Church of Scientology. And it's not because they have cooties. It's because they will do whatever they can to create lawsuits and to thwart the efforts of the protesters out there. The most recent example, and again, we saw it in Chicago, was Chadwick Burke and Nance Drew. Right. There's a claim that there was a contact, right? It would have been the most incidental contact if it even occurred, but there's no real evidence that it did occur in that space. So I would encourage you, don't approach the recruiter. There's not much we can do with them. Again, I told you that I would rather prevent people from joining Scientology than try to get people out of Scientology. So I don't really even have anything to say to the recruiter to try to say, hey, you shouldn't be in Scientology anymore, other than straight up, you shouldn't be there. Move cautiously and steadily, right? Don't make furtive moves. Don't rush towards a Scientologist recruiter. If they're moving away from you at a quick pace, yeah, you can close that distance, but don't really come into their personal space or anywhere near their personal space. And again, these are just the ways that I think it's safest to do this process. And the other one is you want to the candidate that the recruiter is looking at, or the target of the Scientologist, they don't know you either. You're a stranger to them, so be careful how you approach them. I tip, in the next couple of paragraphs, I'll give you some tips on how I do approach them. But remember, they're a stranger too, and you can't come running up on them, arms waving, sky is falling, and not expect them to react or be a little bit worried about what's going on. And there's a great possibility you'll get a defensive reaction out of that. Okay. Now, this next part is kind of the way that the candidate that's being targeted by Scientology is probably going to be moving in one of three ways. More often than not, you're probably following the Scientologist as they're trying to recruit. So they're going to be passing off to people who are coming head on towards them. And just by the nature of that, they'll then naturally walk straight to you after they've been handed the propaganda from the recruiter. They'll be walking towards you. So the candidate's going to be walking towards you. Since they're going to be walking towards you, you're just trying to kind of stay in their path and let them, know that you're here. They're going to come towards you. You don't have to make any furtive efforts toward them. Greet them politely, and then we'll give you some messages to share in the next paragraph. But at the end of the day, you're really letting them come to you. Another place, and this is kind of intersections, you'll see this, and I've got a couple of examples. Let me pause here for just a second. I'm going to take this down for a second. Stop that. This was actually just today, right? On this one, so the Scientologist is on the street. I am south of the Scientologist, and we're going to see somebody come towards them from the north. So this will be the idea that they're heading, that they're coming head on at me. Let me go ahead and hold that.
Are you still mocking your own reactive mind? Isn't it awesome when you go clear, you have perfect recall of everything?
Interesting today.
Do you remember
this
that
person
LRH said that we shouldn't be
actually
doing any
was somewhat
fundraising?
social with
the
me today.
ideal, all of the organizations to be able to be supported on their funds alone. But we know that people aren't coming in here. We know that you're not getting the books sold. We know that you're not getting the courses registered.
So this is the target. You see the handoff, and then the person's going to walk towards me.
It's the cult of Scientology. They're a human trafficking cult.
And I just have to wait there.
Do you want that? Can I have it? Thank you.
Okay, I'll go over a couple of things that are important about what that interaction was. But as you saw, I just let that person come up to me. In the article, the next thing that I'm going to tell you is sometimes you're going to be at an intersection and somebody's going to turn left or right. So they're going to the Scientologist is going to hand off the propaganda, and then instead of the target coming straight towards you, they might be going left or right. And we had an example of that today too. Let me go grab this URL, plug it in over here.
It's the Church of Scientology.
So this was Saturday. Yeah, Saturday. What you're seeing here is the Scientologist is there in the green with the white cap, and she's trying to engage this older gentleman who's in the parking lot. But there's a gentleman, I don't know if the cursor is showing up on screen, but there is a gentleman in white walking away from me, right? And he's already been handed a piece of propaganda. So the first thing I'm trying to do is engage the person right here and say, hey, it's the cult. And I can tell that he's just not interested in anything that this woman has to offer.
Scientology, they're a cult. They're a cult.
You can see the guy that I'm going to engage, he did look backwards. But you'll notice that I have to kind of gently come up.
Sir, that's a Church of Scientology. They're a cult. That's una secta. Yeah. Do you want that? Thank you.
Okay, so he's giving me this, and I don't show you it until I cross the street, but at 30 seconds, well, let me see here. Right about here, somewhere around here, I'm going to show you the capture of the document. Yeah, so this is the second one of the day that I've
It's the Church of Scientology.
Okay. Now, again, the important thing that I'm trying to stress here is that you have to have a different battle plan for different ways that people are going to come and engage you, right? So as we look down there, right, it's going to come walking towards you, walking left or right, or walking away from you. And walking away from you is very similar to what we just saw in that last scenario where they went left or right. And we're just walking up behind them. Sir, ma'am, may I talk to you, right? It's a cult. You were just given some of that. And since if somebody doesn't have headphones on, they can hear you, and they're going to kind of probably stop and turn around as to what you're going. So, you got to be flexible and adapt your approach as we go through there. Now that we've decided how we're going to physically approach this candidate that the Scientologist is trying to recruit, what are we going to say, right? And I normally start with some form of it's a cult, because the reason I say it's a cult is many people actually know that it's a cult, and then they'll go, "Yep, I know." Or when they hear cult, they say, "Oh, my ears are on fire. Let me listen to what's going on in this space." And then it's Scientology. And the reason I say it's Scientology is that the document itself that you're given, or the literature, it's very hard, if at all possible, to find out that you've gotten something from Scientology. Sometimes there's a small address on the back or a copyright on it, but for the most part, you're getting this, let's say, deceptive marketing about some innocuous element. But at the end of the day, it's Scientology, and most people don't know that's what they're getting. So it's always misleading. So that's one of the reasons why I'm saying, hey, it's a cult and it's Scientology, right? The one thing that I'll say is, if I've gotten the right reaction from them, I will ask for it back. And there's a reason I ask for the propaganda back. The first one is, I don't want this propaganda sitting around their house later on, and we're going to find out that, hey, they had a bad breakup the night before, so they're going to read something, so they're in a down state, and they want to look at it in that situation, or they just lost their job, or for whatever reason, right? They had a half a bottle of wine, and they find this document sitting on the table. Let me look at this and let me find interest. So I want to get that out of their hands for that reason. But the other reason I want it, and I don't want it to fall back into the hands of Scientology, is it costs them, right? They need to print. And I know Scientology doesn't pay for this, but somebody in Scientology is going to have to pay for that. Usually they're going to make some public that's either out ethics or that's wealthy and should be donating more than they want to, but that's how they're getting these documents. And I want them to have to keep on spending for this, all of this work in that space. Now, if that initial approach doesn't work, where cult isn't enough, right, in that process, or that it's Scientology, I then kind of go on to what are some of the crimes and misdeeds of the organization, right? The elder abuse, the child abuse, the financial fraud, the trafficking that goes on in this space. Something else that I'll say, so in those situations, I'm usually just listing crimes to say, hey, what it is, and sometimes they'll say, well, what do you mean child trafficking? What do you mean elder abuse? Those kinds of things. And if I don't get really a reaction there, then I'll start with either Danny Masterson or Lisa McPherson. And the reason I use those two names is that when you search those names, it ties back to Scientology in a negative way pretty quickly in regards to what's going on there. So the Danny Masterson story, right, is the idea that, hey, the church wouldn't allow his victims who he sexually assaulted to report their crimes, right? And when they did report their crimes to the police, because it was a Scientologist who was the one that perpetrated the crimes, they were they were disconnected. So excommunication, disconnected, ostracized, shunned, however you want to say it. They would no longer be allowed to talk to their family, and they were also fair game. So they were discredited by the Scientology organization. So those are other things that I'm able to say. Hey, Neverin, thank you so much. I saw you come in, Nance. Thanks, Corn. So I've got the Chicago crew in. Right. So what we're trying to do is give them an anchor point that when they leave, they've got this proper noun name that they'll be able to do some searching on in this space. And usually these things are, they're a heightened element of point number one, where I'm just saying it's a cult or it's Scientology in that space. The one thing you're going to have to always be prepared for is that the person, even though they've listened to you, they're still not willing to give up the literature, and you're going to have to eventually, let that person pass through, right? That you've done your job. You have to feel good about what you've done. Maybe you didn't get the flyer back. Maybe you didn't change anybody's mind, but you did whatever you could. You did what was reasonable in your space to do that. Let the person go. The body routers will be out there more. They're going to keep on passing out propaganda. We just go and try and find the next person, the next victim in that space. So what I'm trying to say here is that you're not going to bat 1,000. I did pretty well early on, but I did have people that did go into the org after receiving it and after hearing what I had to say, and that just happens to be how they are. I hope they're doing well. I hope they didn't fall for everything. Hopefully that they had the first couple levels of escalation on the buying this book and then buying this course and realized that, wait a second, that guy's right. It was just a process. That's one of the other tips and tricks is let them know what's about to happen to them. Hey, they're going to come in, they're going to give you a personality test. They're going to find some small piece that's wrong with you. Your anger management, you're depressed, you're poor in any way, shape, or form. And then they'll say, I've got this book that will help you. And you'll take the book, and it's got a lot of common sense work in it. You could have found any of these answers on Google just the same. And you'll take that book and you'll see the success of how that helped you, and then they'll remind you that it was helpful and say, "Oh, now let's help you with this." Right. So that's another useful tip in this space. So hopefully, what we've learned so far, right, is that yeah, I'm going to say go Cubs. I'll say go Reds a little bit, but I'm more go Cubs. All right. So hopefully, what we're seeing here tonight is that the number one is stay safe, right? Number two, make sure that you're aware of what the laws are in your area. Can you approach somebody on the street? Are you allowed, if you've got a camera, are you allowed to film anybody? Do you have to state that you're filming them, or does it have to be obvious that you're filming them? The other one, I would say, avoid the Scientologist at all costs. There's no real reason, in my opinion. I don't feel comfortable approaching the Scientologist. I don't want to help I don't want to talk to the Scientologist in that space. So we'll go with there. And then I've given you a couple of ways of if the person is coming to you from this direction or that direction, how you might want to handle that, as well as some of the responses that you want to have available to talk to those people. I know we didn't get a lot of people in here. I don't know if I had a notification, and I'm sure that I saw Aaron was live, and I'm sure there's 100 other people that are live tonight. You know, it's a little bit harder to get these in at night, but I thought it was important to get this video out there. Hopefully we'll get people on the replay that are available to see it. But I'm going to open it up right now. Are there any questions that anybody has about what I've stated here? You know, or even some advice? Right. So are there other things that I should put in this article? I can edit this article all day long on this process. Thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. Again, it just so happens that there seems to be a few of these, not specific to body routing, but Kelly Copter did a show today, and there was an article along with that, and Nora Kelly kind of referenced that Nora had here's some questions you can ask of a Scientologist when if you really want to see if you can pierce the veil and get to them, see if you can change their minds, change anything that's going on in that space. Yes. Here's a funny story. All right. I'll come back to that for a second, Dave. I have not found them at the Metro train stations yet, but I have found them in the CTA train stations. So the either the red line or blue line subways, which it's more likely they're going to the subways because in the subway, I have to spend money to go down and find them. If they're on the superstructure of the elevated ramp, they're somewhat visible, so it's just not as safe for them to get up there. But remember, Saturday, we walked, so I was on State Street. So if we think about it, I'll go with the major streets. There's a couple of minor streets that are in the middle there, but you've got Clark, which is where the church is at. Then you've got Dearborn, and then you've got State Street. Now, there's actually two additional streets that are in there, but those are only half-block elements. Hey, Susan, welcome in. So that I found them out in front of the Jones College Prep. Yeah, they're getting pretty far away there. Today, I will. Oops. Go back here. So today, I had a bit of a win and a bit of a failure. So we were at the org. I was able to get them to pull the shades down. That first video that we saw today with the black female that handed out the flyer, that was today. And then she went in after she had the one failed attempt. I was able to capture that piece of propaganda. She went into the org. I didn't see her again the rest of the day. But after that, I saw Jessica and skateboard guy. I don't know what skateboard guy's name is, but he's the young blonde guy with the high pompadour hair. They left the organization and they walked down Harrison, and they didn't see me at first, but when they got to Dearborn, so at Harrison and Dearborn, they did see me. Now, what was fun there, they had handed off a flyer to a gentleman, and the gentleman kind of took one look at it and immediately just dumped it in the trash can. And I've got a picture of that as well. When he came by, I said, "Hey, good job on the flyer," and he gave me a thumbs up. He knew he knew that. But that was about when they became aware that I was following them. They then crossed the street to the north side, got up to State Street, and when they turned onto State Street, they both started running. And I ran to follow them. I'm going to say, in hindsight, that probably wasn't smart in regards to it, because again, it looks like a more aggressive movement in that way. But I still feel I would have been able to defend what I was doing. But it's still, that's a more risky move. Now, there are times where I will say it's fine to run, like if they go around a corner and they were half a block ahead of you, you can run up to the corner to see if they try to go into a doorway or something like that. But I wouldn't really follow them. But it ended up, they ran all the way to Michigan Avenue. So they ran from State Street to Michigan Avenue. And just as they got to Michigan Avenue and Congress, they passed Congress going north. And I tried to go across Congress. And as Dave alludes to here, I was wearing dress shoes. And I did a little Fosbury flop right there on the ground in the middle of the street. At which point I had to kind of collect all of my gear, right? All of the phone fell off the gimbal, had to get the gimbal a little bit corrected, kind of had to gather myself. I had dropped a couple of pieces of paper. I wanted to collect those. And I also didn't want to get hit by a car. So at which point they lost me, and I couldn't really reacquire where the propaganda was at. So they're going to get a win out of that today. Now, I was able to capture one piece of propaganda, and we saw that we had some propaganda thrown out. But that they're all the way to Grant Park, and I didn't find that to be strange, because I knew originally people used to put, when they were up in Lakeview, they would bring card tables down to Grant Park and do Dianetics out there in Grant Park. So it's not unthought of to think they would go that far out. We know that for Easter, they were passing out in very far neighborhoods. So the Chatham neighborhood, which is on the fringe of Chicago in this space. Okay. Any other questions that don't denigrate my attire? Okay, I wanted to get this out here. We've got the article associated with it. Hopefully, we'll try to get this over to Nance today. I'll send this link out to Kelly so she can put it in the bottom of her video that she put out today, and we will go from there. Folks, I really appreciate everybody joining us. I know we didn't have a huge crowd, but it was a loyal crowd. Yeah, you know what? One of the challenges I have with that is that I've given away so many pieces that I'm going to have to, I need to one day just sit down. And by the way, editing video is really boring, but I need to go back through my video and find all of those places where I captured this information, or where, both the successes and failures. There have been a couple of times where I've lost them in that space. So, that is something that I want to say is very helpful. In order for me to really feel comfortable going out and finding the body routers or staying with the body routers, it's important that people like Korn and Nance, Never In, who are more comfortable around the front of the organization, if they're there, then I know that I can, they're the ones that are going to help keep the publics out of there and to keep the close body rotting down to a minimum. And they're going to be able to challenge the members walking in. They're the ones that are putting chalk on the sidewalk, putting signage up. But when they're there, I can be more mobile, and I really appreciate that. So if you really, the reason I put this out here is because I want to say it's this simple to come and help with this, thwarting the body routing efforts that are out there. And by the way, I mentioned some of the people in the chat. You've got Juanita, just the same. Heligear is out there. We had 8 different protesters out there on Saturday, and that's always a good feeling. We know, that we can cover the front door, cover the back door, cover large parts of the neighborhood in that space. So let's see here. Ha. Yeah, Sergeant Dolan. Boo. Yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot because I left before Cat Ocean got there. And we also had Joe Cool out there. And one of the things that I've had a couple of conversations with him. He's going to help me do the FOIA requests a little bit more effectively, I would say. The other one is that he wants to get educated on what Scientology is, because he wants to know better about how he can thwart the efforts and be a force in the way that most of us other anti-Scientologists, who are all doing this independently and of our own accord. But any education that we can share with him is advantageous. So I think that we're going to see him a little bit more, and he's a force, akin to what we would say, out of William Good out there is. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Hey, Jurgen, thanks for coming in. I'm going to say we're kind of at the close. I'm going to ask Fuzzy if there's other lives that we can go ahead and jump in on. And by the way, folks, when we ask you to go over to the other lives, the reason is we're trying to grow the space. We're trying to help the smaller channels who are still trying to get their watch hours in. If you're here, Declared Dave still needs the watch hours to be monetized. So he's got some playlists out there. I know the Corn Freak still needs hours to get monetized. Never In doesn't really, I don't think she has a channel. She's just a friend of the cause in this space. But Juanita has that. So at night, when you're going to bed, just turn the volume all the way down, put on a playlist. When we jump over to these other room raids, so we're going to go to Moose on the Loose. Moose on the Loose is a pretty small channel. I think that I saw that he had a couple of hundred, maybe 300-400 subscribers today. Okay, great. Yeah, Never In. Good that you've got the channel there. So another one. Let's go make sure that we're visiting Never In and doing that as well. But tonight, let's go over to Moose on the Loose. It's important that when you go over there, leave a comment, but also leave a comment on the video itself, because that's going to subscribe and leave a comment on the video, because that gives it more stickiness. That if you only subscribe, you have a better chance of YouTube just unsubscribing you from that. So I don't think I've got much else. I will say, hey, definitely read the article. There's plenty. I think there's 6 articles up on WindyCityThetanWatch.com or WCTW.live. They're just 2 different URLs to the same location. And Never In, I'm more than happy to help you with the StreamYard, get you running up. We'll get you headed up there. But for now, I am going to run over to Moose on the Loose, and hopefully some of you will as well, and show some love over on these small subscribers and make sure that we're continually increasing the size and awareness of the anti-Scientology space. Yep, and let them know Wendy sent you. All right. Thank you all. I really appreciate you coming in here. You've been a great, loyal crowd. Love it. Thanks so much.